Without any further ado, let me go ahead and introduce my my speaking partner today, Maria Haggerty, owner of Dotcom Distribution. Maria, would you give us a little background about yourself?
Hi, Justin. Hi, everyone. As Justin said, I'm Maria Haggerty. I am the co-founder and CEO of Dotcom Distribution. We were founded about 20 years ago. On a personal note or a business note, I'm also a CPA by background. I'm a mom, and I'm soon going to be a grandmom too. So try to balance that work-life balance here.
Excellent. And yes, it is about balance, but let's go ahead and let's move into, I want to tell people a little bit about our agenda. So we're going to be talking about a lot of things today. We're going to be talking about Dotcom's history and strengths. We're going to be talking about, and by the way, Dotcom is a 3PL. And we're going to, as soon as we move into the next segment, we'll talk more into detail about that. But we're going to talk about the survive and thrive, especially through what's happened in the last year. We're going to talk about onboarding carriers, something that affects anybody who ships, but especially 3PLs. We're going to talk about what can be done to make onboarding a 3PL easier. We're going to talk about our relationship, because that the relationship between a service provider and the software provider is really important. We're going to have a section for final thoughts. And then finally, anything that we didn't answer as we went through each of these sections, we'll go ahead and we'll try to wrap up as many as we can at the end of this. But let's go ahead and let's, Maria, let me throw it back over to you, and let's find out about the history of Dotcom, about, you know, when you guys were founded, what you guys do for your customers, things of that nature.
Okay, sure. So Dotcom, we founded Dotcom in 2000, so I often joke that it was a turn of the century. And we started it because we thought this whole internet thing was going to be a thing. Anybody that's on here that can remember back to 2000, which is now 21 years ago, I still can't believe that. But the whole internet was in its infancy, and my business partner and I worked at a video manufacturing company. We were doing a lot of direct-to-consumer distribution back then via infomercials. And, you know, the internet was really just starting to come on, and we were like, oh, this whole direct-to-consumer thing is going to be something. So we had actually tried to buy Good Times Home Video, which was our, you know, the company that we had both worked at, and, you know, for various reasons that didn't happen. So we said, let's just take the fulfillment part of this and focus on .com distribution, because back in 2000, e-commerce wasn't even a word. So we did that, and we started with a really beautiful facility, and we thought we were just going to be bombarded with business. And what wound up happening was we opened this beautiful facility, and we had absolutely no clients, and e-commerce was just not ready. We did start getting a bunch of little clients that were definitely not ready for prime time, and it was like really a crash and burn environment back then. People were getting tons of money, and they were just blowing right through it and going out of business. So, you know, within the first couple of years, we realized we needed to do something to keep the lights on. We were also challenged with things that were in, you know, the market, where, you know, the market tanked back then, which was considered the .com bubble, and here that was our name. You know, and then we also had 9/11, which really had a very big negative impact on our business. So we were like, we got to keep the lights on. What are we going to do? So we went back to doing the other thing we knew how to do, which was B2B fulfillment. And that was really how we kept the lights on for the first 5 years. There really wasn't a whole lot of direct to consumer. But in about 2005, things really started coming back alive, and we started seeing, you know, that e-commerce business starting to evolve. We landed some clients that were really e-commerce focused, like a ThinkGeek, J&J, eStore, and Kenneth Cole. And from there, our business really started to thrive. So what had happened, though, was because we went back to those B2B roots, we now had a product or a service that not really many other people had, was that we could do both e-commerce fulfillment and B2B fulfillment. So that really became part of our strengths and part of our success stories. And as we continue to grow and evolve, now I say that all of our clients have an e-commerce component, and most of them, not all of them, but most of them do have some sort of B2B business as well. So, you know, that was our roots, and that's how we got to where we are now, being really true multi-channel.
And you guys don't really, I mean, you're not looking for just anything, right? You're not looking to just ship widgets. You guys have a more hands-on approach. Is that right?
Yeah, so what we like to say is we are looking for what we call emerging prestige brands. So we're looking for a brand that really wants to deliver a brand experience. They're not looking to, you know, I often say we don't look to put red widgets in boxes, even though red widgets is one of my favorite examples. But we do a lot of, you know, skincare products where you're buying something that you probably could buy at CVS for $5, but you're buying an upscaled version of that lotion or potion, and you want to have an experience when you get it. You want it to come in a nice box. You want it to be wrapped nicely. You want to feel like you actually got something. And I think that way back when we were doing Vineyard Vines, this was, you know, kind of the realization for me is like, you know, Vineyard Vines ties are probably like in the $125 category. And you didn't want to just, you know, if you're spending that much money on a tie, you wanted that whole experience. And Vineyard Vines was really, really good with delivering that e-commerce experience. They still are. Is, you know, they had really beautiful boxes that, in fact, you know, those boxes lasted for years. I had them up in my attic using them for Christmas boxes, you know, for everyone that I got in the mail. But they, you know, the ties had to be where the point of the tie never touch the bottom of the box, and it was in a craft paper, so that when you open that tie up, you really felt like you were getting a gift. So these are the types of brands that we look for, but oftentimes they don't fit in a really large 3PL that is all process, and a really small 3PL doesn't have the scalability that we have. So we've kind of married scalability and flexibility and giving our customers our clients, customers really, the attention that they crave, because really our goal is to satisfy our clients' customers. And if we could satisfy our clients' customers, we've then satisfied our clients.
Yeah. So I think this is a great illustration for our listeners. When it comes to 3PLs, they're not all the same. There are some that, like you said, put red widgets in boxes and ship them out, all process and things of that nature. But then there are others that are really a high touch experience capability. Excellent. So let's keep moving on here. I know we could talk for hours. It's one of the nice things about working together. But let's move on here and let's talk about the last 2 years, right? Because let's face it, there's been some pretty unprecedented things across the entire market, and a lot of our listeners and both of our companies have been affected by what's been going on. Can you talk about some of the things that you've seen as a 3PL, some of the concerns you had, how they turned out, right? Not exactly the way you expected. And of course, I'd like you to talk about how you've leveraged the integration in your enterprise software stack, preferably talk about your shipping software, but talk about how you leverage that to flex and move forward with the with everything.
Yeah, so I mean, to say that these last 2 years have been, you know, a roller coaster is probably the biggest understatement. I mean, you know, I've definitely, in the 21 years that we've been operating .coms, we've certainly seen bumps in the road, but not like the bump that, you know, started like, let's say, early March.
I mean, let's face it, you've been through the .com crash, through 9/11, through 2008. I'm there with you. So yeah.
I mean, it's been a crazy 20 years, but this top the cake, and hopefully, well, I don't know that I could say that this will be the last bump that we see. I think we will expect many, many other bumps and certainly ripples that are coming from this that we're already seeing now. So the first thing I say about, starting off in this pandemic is every single prediction that I made was 100% wrong. I got it all wrong all the time. I thought in the early stages that, when Trump said that everything was shutting down, and, Cuomo said here in New York, and, Murphy in New Jersey, that everything was shutting down, everybody had to stay home except for essential workers. I figured we were going to be shut down because I didn't see us as essential workers. But lo and behold, warehousing and logistics was essential. And I then said, okay, great, we get to go to work. But then we had to figure out how we were going to get people to work and how they could get there safely. I mean, I think in the first few days, I actually sent a letter to all of my employees that they could keep with them, so that if they got stopped by state troopers, they would know that they were essential workers to go to work. So it was getting the labor involved. Getting the labor in was was clearly a big challenge, and managing customers' expectations, our clients' expectations, was really a big part of that. So the good news, the bad news was, the good news was e-commerce was booming. I mean, and that was another thing. I could not have predicted that anybody was going to be buying, cosmetics and lotions and potions and things like that. I was like, everybody's staying home. But who knew that you're going to be on Zoom all day long? So of course you need to look good. So, our products, our clients' products were in high demand, and we had a high demand of e-commerce volume. The blessing and the curse at the same time was retail completely dried up. So, that hurt our customers, our clients, a lot, because most of them are multi-channel. And when they had to close down, hundreds of stores, they had to move all of that volume to e-commerce. So the business really just shifted. So the volume that I think we would have normally done out of the B2B side really all went out direct to consumer e-commerce side. The only retail business that we were doing was if we were shipping to Amazon, if we were shipping to Target, if we were shipping to Walmart, any of those big box retailers that were considered essential got to stay open. So that was the only B2B business we had. The next challenge was, okay, the labor market. How do you get labor in there? How do you make them feel safe? How do you put the protocols in place? I mean, we were having, the facility, and, it was a 400,000 square foot facility. We were having our facility like basically steam cleaned and, disinfected, multiple times a week on, on the graveyard shift. Getting people to come to work, providing them with the masks and the gloves and all of that. Supply chain was so screwed up that it was hard to get that. And, the hand sanitizer stations all over the place. Putting 6 foot, the social distancing markings everywhere. We had like little cardboard men type of things in the warehouse to make sure that people were separated so that germs didn't spread. So just figuring out logistically, how do you operate a warehouse in a pandemic was something that I never thought that I would have to learn. And then the human toll of it was making people feel comfortable that they were coming to work. I mean, people, especially in the very early days, really thought they were risking their lives just to come to work. So it was a really scary time. So there was that whole human side of it where you really were trying to keep people like comfortable and safe, and that they're putting their trust in you, and you don't want to hear that you were the reason that somebody got COVID because you made them come to work. So we really took all of that seriously. So once we got that going, then that was we got our groove back and started fulfilling our orders on a more timely basis, because the first few weeks were really challenging. And we did have to set customer expectations. Same day SLAs were not a thing anymore. Amazon also told us that that was okay, because Amazon's delivery times have definitely gone down. So that's something that we had to really just adjust our clients' expectations with. And then, Christmas came around, and, we had been operating at what was what felt like peak from, from March until December, and now here is Christmas. And it was clearly a different kind of Christmas for everybody because we were all still socially distanced. I know for me personally, it was the first Christmas ever that I didn't spend with my extended family. So people, I think, went out of their way to make up for it. So it was a very big Christmas. And you got, first time ever in my entire life, UPS, FedEx, DHL saying, oh, by the way, your capacity is limited to what you did in July. I was like, what? July? July capacity in December is you're telling me what my limit is? So we had to really figure that out quickly and say, we can't tell our clients, oh, you can only ship your July volume at Christmas. Like that wasn't going to work. So we had to really work quickly to find local regional carriers that we could onboard and, get them in place and working with us so that we had the capacity to actually get the products that we were fulfilling out the doors.
So as part of that, let's talk about a little bit about the way you guys do business, because you guys have a pretty great tech stack. When I talk about tech stack, I'm talking about the enterprise software stack. I'm talking about things like OMSs, ERPs, WMSs, and most importantly to me as a technical individual is how communication occurs between them. Okay, and you guys have picked a very a very open set of communication between the rest of your enterprise software stack. So you mentioned you had to onboard a lot of carriers. How did that? How did having those additional that open enterprise software stack? How did that make things easier, or did you run into any other concerns just onboarding carriers?
No, actually, fortunately, onboarding carriers is, actually, I always say this, and I say it carefully because my IT guys probably go, it's not that easy, Maria, but it is an everyday occurrence, and maybe not every day. We don't onboard a new carrier every single day, but it is something that we do regularly because now more and more you're getting these regional carriers that that focus on, let's say the tri-state area, for instance, and there's more and more of those that are trying to take some time out of the whole transit process. So we do have a good process for onboarding carriers. It's not something that you just, probably 10 years ago it was, okay, we onboarded UPS, we onboarded FedEx, we're done. We're never going to do this again. Now the landscape has changed so much that, FedEx and UPS are getting, CEO of UPS said right out, we have limited capacity, so we're going to be very choosy with who our customers are. So, you've got FedEx and, UPS basically saying, I'm going to limit your capacity at holiday. You have no choice but to have other carriers in your back pocket so that you could do that. And that's something that I think the pandemic has certainly accelerated, but it's something that really has been around for a while. UPS and FedEx are the big guys. So sometimes when you're not, like your Dotcom, and we are really clearly a middle market company, we need to have middle market solutions as partners as well. So that whole onboarding is really, it's a process, and it's a process that we do, and it's a process that working with ProShip, and ProShip does work with the WMS in particular. It's a process that is established, and where there's SOPs for it, and it's just something that we do. So it's not something like that's such a big deal. It's not like we're integrating a whole new WMS. We're just onboarding a carrier.
Yeah, and I'd like to go a little technical in some of our audience here and talk about two things as we're talking about that. One is separation of concerns. For most of your customers, nothing is decided in the WMS. It is handed to the shipping software to make the decision, meaning that when you have a problem like what we've got on our slides today, where you've got a minimum amount you've got to keep for incentives, you've got a maximum amount that you can actually fit in a trailer in a day because of your new obligations with the carrier, if the shipping software is making the decision, it can take those two parameters into account. Also, onboarding carriers. If the shipping system is making the decision, onboarding a carrier doesn't mean you have to change your business rules. You just change some of the inputs for those business rules. So that's something that can be really, really helpful as you are looking to onboard carriers in your own company, or if you're looking to your 3PL to add more. Understanding how they actually put their business rules in place, whether or not these are fixed, just a set of business rules for you, or whether they're a very flexible automation set of business rules that just takes parameters and will move within those parameters to find everybody the best solution, the best experience for their customer. That's really one of those areas that can be extremely helpful. So
Completely.
let's talk. Oh, go ahead, Marie.
No, I just completely agree with that. It's
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about because this is another thing we saw a lot during the pandemic. We saw many customers, many retailers that didn't either already have ship from store going or didn't have a warehouse in a particular region. In order to find more capacity, in order to onboard additional carriers, they went out and they found 3PLs. So if I've decided that, you know what, I can't have this happen to my company again, what do I need to look at as a manufacturer, as a retailer, if I want to onboard a 3PL? What should I be looking at?
so there, so looking for a 3PL is, first of all, understanding what your business is and what your objectives are. So, are you looking for a 3PL that's going to do e-commerce, that's going to do B2B fulfillment, retail fulfillment, combination of all of those? What does your inventory look like? What is your SKU base? What are the dimensions of your SKUs? What do you want your experience to be? Clearly the experience going to a CVS, if that's your B2B customer, is going to be different than if you're sending it to Maria's house. So what do you want that experience to be? What do you want your packaging to look like? What do you want that whole pack out to look like, your brand experience? What forecasting data? How many units are you going to ship? How many orders are you going to ship? What's your average value per order? Do you need it insured? Are you going to ship an average of 1 unit an order or 10 units an order? That's a completely different process. Where is your inventory coming from? What's your lead times on it? What are your min maxes? So knowing all of this data and then having a process of communicating with your 3PL is really critical. I mean, that's one of the things that, at Dotcom that I think is probably the most important thing, is just being able to communicate with our clients, keeping them in the loop on the day-to-day. I've got an issue with this inventory that came in that was damaged on the trailer. I need to let you know as soon as possible. I need to send you pictures if there's damages, because you're going to want to put that up on your site for sale, and if it's damaged, you're not going to be able to. What are the capacity constraints? If you're going to forecast that you're going to do 1,000 units a day, and then you decide to run a sale and you're going to do 10,000 units a day when you went from 1,000 units a day, that's probably going to be a problem for your 3PL if you don't plan for it in advance. So those are the types of things I'd say. Communication is the key rather. One of the things we have on the slide is it an emergency? And that's, I have had many new clients come in with literally hair on fire. My 3PL is locking the doors on me. They can't ship my orders. I need a solution and I need it now. And we have onboarded clients in as little as 2 weeks. It's not the optimal way to onboard a client. I would say a good, complete onboarding process should take on average 4 to 8 weeks, depending on how complex the business is. We shortcutted it and done it in 2 weeks, but you do that with the full knowledge that you're shortcutting a lot of testing processes. And with that comes risk. But if you cross your T's and dot your I's, and usually that whole onboarding process goes fairly smooth. What we do at Dotcom, after a client is onboarded, we put them in what we call hypercare. So for probably the next 30 to 60 days, again, depending on the complexity of the client, we are talking to them every day, and we are watching all of their orders going out. We're watching the billing that gets generated as a result of it. So while it's all flowing automatically the way it should, it's being audited so that we're double checking to make sure that what we expect to happen is actually happening.
Let me interject here, because you're talking a lot about, I mean, I'm just sitting here because obviously I work at the other end of the warehouse. I don't work on the receiving end. I work on the goes out end, and it sounds like you need to receive a lot of data. I can't help but ask, because you're looking at if you're a retailer, you need to communicate promotions, you need to communicate inbound goods, you need to communicate orders, and there needs to be that loop back in the event that you get a container and you open it and seawater flies out of it or something like that, right? Do you see customers that are working best with you? Do they have a single point of contact for all that, or are some of the more successful customers more of a team approach? They've got somebody from marketing, from logistics, from so on and so forth.
Yeah, no, it's definitely more of a team approach. I mean, there usually is one point person. So we have one point person, we call them our program manager. Usually our clients, it's usually somebody in operations or supply chain that is a point person. But, we're working heavily with IT. There's a lot of IT and, conversations, because my technology team has to work with their technology team.
Oh, I forgot the tech person.
Yeah, they're kind of important. So that's clearly a team. There's also the finance people that talk to each other, billing, receivables, payables. So that all goes together. We don't talk to marketing as much as we would like to, but we do like to get marketing involved, because those are the guys that are coming up with all of the promotions that are going to drive volume. So we like to, get ahead of that too. But it is, there is a point person on both sides that really own the relationship, but there is also that team approach. So we also have a whole communication cadence that we work on with our clients. So, our program managers are talking to their counterparts, usually every single day on, here's the plan for today, here's what we're doing, here's what happened. Then there's usually a weekly touch base with them. There's then a monthly business review where you get more people involved. And then there's a quarterly strategic QBR, quarterly business review. That's more strategic. That has more of the high level people in there that are, talking about more big picture things, long range planning, and things like that. So there's a lot of layers in that communication, and it's definitely, it's a single point of contact, but a team approach at the same time.
Excellent. Let's get down to one last detail, the last bullet point we have on the slide here, because I have to admit, having been in logistics for 20 years now, this is one that I just assumed happened, right? And you're talking about how to get your receipt from dock to stock, right? And, from a guy who takes it from stock to carrier, I guess I don't think about that too much. And I'm assuming that a lot of customers a lot of your customers are thinking, well, I'm just going to get it to 3PL and they'll take care of it. Can you just magically take care of it without any additional information? Or what does a customer really need to work with you on?
Yeah, I often say I always wish I had fairy dust, but I don't. So what do we need to do? So, you've got a purchasing department that has purchased the fanciest red widget ever, and you're going to sell 1 million of them. What do we need to know? Well, I need to know that you purchased it. So send me your purchase order. Okay. And then tell me when it's coming, because I need to schedule that, schedule the resources that are there to receive the truck when it comes in. It's got to be unloaded, it's got to be identified, and it's got to be received. So we work with our clients to work with their suppliers so that we have a purchase order in the system. We understand what's on the purchase order. when the goods arrive, there should be a a packing list there so that we can check that if you said you were sending me 1,000 red widgets, that there are indeed 1,000 red widgets and they're not blue widgets instead. So I know, like, one of the big jokes used to be, it's like, how do you know if it's periwinkle or it's blue? Because we would be looking at that. So, so it's understanding what's coming in, it's understanding the timing of when it's coming in, and then, it's understanding that those goods are coming in, and now we need to process them and put them away. So we also need to know the dimensions of what's coming in so that we have the proper spaces to put them in. I apologize, landscaper just showed up. They'll be gone in a second.
No problem. All right, so I'm just going to remind the audience, now is a great time to get questions in. We are going to have several minutes for questions at the end here. Let's go ahead and let's keep moving forward here. And let's talk about, though the slide here we say, specifically our relationship, but I think that it's best to think about this as the relationship that any 3PL should have with their ship and execution software. This is one of those areas where I think we've alluded to this a little bit. We've talked about the fact that we've got some nice business rules in place with you guys, flexible business rules. Anybody who follows me on the ProShip podcasts or anything like that, you'll hear me say prescriptive versus algorithmic. Okay, and that is really a key to flexibility. As we talked about with onboarding carriers, you guys don't have to rearrange a ton of business rules as part of that. Okay, that's really a key, regardless of whether you're using ProShip or not. Okay, when you have a shipping software connected to a WMS, to an OMS, to a point of sale, the more flexible those business rules are, the more thought that is put into them, rather than just saying, if it's 1 pound, it goes postal. If it's up to 3 pounds, it goes UPS ground. Right? Those are prescriptive business rules, and that means if you don't have UPS capacity anymore, you now need to dig deeper into that rule and make it more complicated. On the other hand, if you're saying, here's my package, here's its origin, destination, and some type of a key, in this case, it's we need to get it there next day. We need to get it there in 3 days. This is a value package. We just need to make sure it gets there and we know when it's going to be delivered. That's more of an algorithmic approach, which makes it really easy to add more carriers. And I think that I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna talk about. I asked you about, if I'm a retailer, what type of a partnership do I need with you, right? And you talked, it's usually a single point person, but likewise, I think it should be similar with between the enterprise software stack vendors and yourself as a 3PL. So though you and I don't always talk, we do have our designated personnel that talk directly to one another, that have those kind of, whether it's a QBR or just a, hey, we are adding 3 more carriers because of, fill in the reason. And we also get to operate under that emergency versus planned approach as well. And I think that's really an important thing that we want to mention. Ray, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, I think that the thing that is nice about working with partners, because you're right, you have partners upstream and downstream. My clients are my partners, but I also have partners, ProShip, our WMS supplier. It all goes back to that communication piece. It's like if you're talking and if you have the relationship there, you could solve problems together. And there's problems that come up in any business relationship. And I always say that it's the human piece. It's like, do we work collaboratively to solve these challenges? Because they're not necessarily a problem that, like, oh, you did something wrong. It's like, no, there's a new business challenge. Hey, we just had a global pandemic where we can't find room on carriers, on how do we solve for that? So working creatively and strategically with your partners is really a good way to solve problems. And also to kind of get ahead of them and figure out what you could do to even make it better, to, to say, okay, my famous, it's not my famous saying, but I use it often, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, is I do think that this pandemic, coming out of this pandemic, we've come out of this pandemic as a stronger company with stronger relationships with our partners, because we just went through something together and we solved a lot of problems together that were thrown at us.
Well, and how many things that you assumed you needed, how many parts of the process that were critical in the past that you realized weren't actually providing the value. I think that's what all of us have found that have survived and or thrived during the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Is there's a lot of things we were doing because we thought they were requirements, but maybe in our case they were requirements in 2005.
Yeah.
And they really don't provide the value today that we thought they did.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I want to before we get into general questions, I realized that there was one thing that we didn't talk about, and that is that you and I at least chatted about earlier, and I wanted to bring it back up because I thought it was very interesting. Because you solve problems for your customers, and some of those problems, and we've discussed that your base of operations is New Jersey, right? What if I've got a problem on the West Coast? Okay, I know we talked about you guys helping to solve some of those problems, and I like to look at that as let's face it, a 3PL is there to help solve a lot of these problems. So do we want to go back over any of those stories we chatted about?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, so when we talked, getting ready for this, we talked about most of our clients are what I would call middle market clients, right? So as I said, they're emerging prestige brands. So oftentimes they think that they want to have inventory in multiple locations, but they're not yet sophisticated enough to manage that inventory in multiple locations. So we have, a hybrid approach to this. So one is, we have partners on the West Coast. We have actually partners all over the country. So if we have clients that need to have inventory in multiple locations, we can help them strategically place that inventory in multiple locations and ship from those locations using our software. So we just get somebody to physically do it, and we're sending them the instructions over the via the WMS.
Does that mean they need to have relationship with those other parties as well, or are you controlling the relationship?
No, we control the relationship, so they don't have to. So that's one approach. The other approach is to use, ProShip and the shipping software to really say, okay, if I want to get everything to the West Coast in 3 days or less, what services do I need to use? And what's my budget? What's my constraint? Do I want to, if I could get it there in 3 days for this dollar amount, can I do that? And that is often actually less costly than keeping inventory in multiple locations, because even if you have the best order management system, if you don't have a lot of volume, to go out of both of those locations, and you are running with a pretty wide SKU base, the chances are of you getting the right product in the right location at the right time is not as great as figuring out how to get it there in 3 days from one location. So you're going to wind up spending more in inventory carrying costs. You're going to pay, most 3PLs charge you for storing your product. Well, if I have to store a red widget in New Jersey and a red widget in California, that's going to cost me 2 storage locations as opposed to 1. So now if you multiply that over, apparel clients that could have 20,000 SKUs, you might have the right medium red shirt in California, but if somebody wants that small red shirt, it might be in New Jersey. So you might still wind up shipping it to California, but you're paying for multiple locations. So it really is analyzing, the SKU base has a huge amount to do with it, because obviously the smaller your SKU base, the easier it is to manage the inventory. But if you have a large breadth of SKUs, it's very challenging to manage that inventory. You really need to have super sophisticated analytics to do it. And it's often
having a partner to help you with that really sounds like it's key.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
All right. Well, our timing is going very well here. I do want to before we get to questions, I would definitely like to give you an opportunity. Do you have any final thoughts for our audience? Any last takeaways? Anything? If you learned anything from this, please know this 1, 2, or 3 things.
Okay. So I always said, like, let's see, my 1, 2, or 3 things. So one is communication is always key in all relationships, but I feel like that's table stakes. 2 is I would say the soapbox that I am most often on is manage your inventory. Go through your inventory. This is from a 3PL perspective. Figure out what are your slow and no movers and make a decision on them. Have a product life cycle. And the third is, now I forgot what the third was. So those were 2. Let's go with 2 instead of 3.
That's fine. That's fine. Excellent. All right. We are going to before we do final questions, I really do want to remind people now is the time. Get those questions in. We've got several questions already. For those of you that haven't heard something that you were looking for talked about, please get those in via the question section, and we will our people working behind the scenes will help out. So, for example, our first question is from James White, and he asked, and the question, Maria, this question is for you. What is a multi-channel brand?
Oh, so a brand that is multi-channel is somebody that ships direct to consumer. They also could have their own retail stores, so they're shipping into their retail stores. So Vineyard Vines is a perfect example of a multi-channel client, right? So they have their own stores, they have their own retail stores, they have their own outlet stores. They ship direct to consumer, and they are also shipping into major retailers. So you'll find them in the Nordstroms and Bloomingdales of the world. So that is what we call multi-channel. I think it's also called omni-channel now too.
That's what I was going to go with. From the shipping world, if you're shipping from all your inventory sources, we are calling that omni-channel nowadays. So yeah, it's definitely an evolving thing. Okay, excellent. Our next question, and I'm sorry, I'm going to not have a great pronunciation of this name. Krapan Verstogi. I apologize. I'm a Midwesterner, and my pronunciation is not always that great. They asked, what is advanced date shopping? And I guess the best thing that I can tell you is that when it comes to advanced date shopping, you're really looking at all the variables. So, Maria, just ballpark, how many trailers do you usually have at your facility at any point in time?
Probably 20.
There we go. Yeah. And you've got 20, you've got multiple pulls throughout the day, but at some point in time, sometimes as early as 3, sometimes as late as 11 p.m., somewhere in that 7-hour block, you're going to get your last trailer pull from carrier A, carrier B, and carrier C. But they're not happening at the right time, right? Some of them may happen very early in the day. Some of them may happen significantly later. It depends upon what your warehouse manager has negotiated with that individual, what contracts you've got with the individual carriers, so on and so forth. So what advanced date shopping does is when you look at a customer expectation, right? If somebody's expecting something this Friday, okay, here we are. It's 2 o'clock, almost 2 o'clock Eastern. It's very early on the West Coast. If we were to place a package across the scale, we know we could evaluate all of our carriers equally. We could simply look and say, which services do they have that will actually, leaving the warehouse today, get there by Friday? Okay, maybe if this is going to New York, we can use a ground service, right? But let's move it back a couple hours in the day. Now it's 5 or 6, maybe even 7 o'clock at night. Some of those carriers are no longer there, meaning if we apply one of their labels, that package won't leave until Thursday, which means to get it, we're going to have to use a service that is a next day service. So by making that real-time evaluation, what services are available, what trailers have pulled, what the time in transit is, and then taking all that into account with the cost, as well as the customer's expectation, all of that together, nine separate sets of data pulled together to provide Maria and her team with the lowest cost label that will meet or exceed her customer's expectation. That is what advanced date shopping is. All right. Okay, so here's one. Our friend Dave Dunster, who's also an East Coast individual. Just curiosity, what regional carriers did you have success with in and around New Jersey?
Oh,
If you feel comfortable answering that. I know sometimes we don't want to, we definitely don't always want to talk about the ones that didn't quite work.
yeah, you know what? I'm going to have to defer to actually my transportation team that actually knows all of the carriers that we deal with and has the SLAs on them. So I wish I had a better answer, but I don't have that granular level of detail.
Yeah. So yeah, by the way, we are, for those of you who are interested, we are doing a regional carrier webinar. Actually, I think it's in 2 hours. So if you guys are already signed up for Pros Who Know, if you're watching that one, we'll talk a lot about those going forward. Okay. We got a couple of variations of this question, Maria. Is there cutoff to onboard you before peak 2021? Is it already too late? I know we talked about emergency onboarding. We talked about normal onboarding. Is it too late? Or is this something where if somebody is looking to onboard you, they should be calling up going to your website, contacting your sales team, so on and so forth?
Yeah, no, we're still actively bringing on clients for before peak of this year. Where we normally will cut that off is, by November 1st, there's no new clients coming in. So if you back that back for 8 weeks, that, we're pretty much the end of September, where, we could have October, well, the end of August, so September and October. That's pretty much, we are coming close to it because this year is flying past, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So, but again, that goes to the emergency situation. I mean, we have, and I've done it more than once. We've onboarded clients that have had really, really tough situations. We've onboarded clients in November and even as early as December. And some of them were pretty big onboardings, and they did turn out to be like successful clients after that onboarding. But it is, if you don't go through that 6 to 8 week process, everybody just needs to be aware that it is really painful.
Excellent, excellent. All right, moving on. By the way, the questions are coming in. We're probably going to have to cut off some of them here pretty soon. Looks like we got a follow-up on advanced date shopping. The question is, how does that differ from rate shopping? Rate shopping, regardless of when you do it during the time of the day, is simply looking for the lowest cost. That is what you would refer to as a basic rate shop. There's a level between a basic rate shop, which simply says for these services, what's the lowest cost that goes there, which means you can actually, again, for a basic rate shop, you could put a laser ship, an on-track, United States Post Office, and a national carrier all in there. Now, as those of you who are familiar with laser ship and on-track, they serve completely different coasts. Just because their services are in there, they should error out, not a problem. If we are serving something on the East Coast, LaserShip would return a bid. If it's less expensive than the national or any other carriers that are in there, it would win. Great way to save money, great way to diversify your carriers while you're at it, okay? Next level up is time and transit shopping. You still do the same stuff, but you eliminate anything that will not get it there in a number of business days, okay? And that business day thing is the key. So Maria, when you and I started, if somebody ordered something on a Friday, did they expect it Sunday or even Monday? No, they didn't, right? You expected it Wednesday. That was your 2-day shipping, right? You ordered it at 4 o'clock on a Friday, you weren't getting it till Wednesday, and that was what we thought. Well, as we know, the big impact from Amazon, Walmart, and all those, they now, if we order it on Friday with 2-day expectation, that 2 days is a Sunday, okay? So that's why business days doesn't always work anymore. And that's where taking into account when it's going to leave the warehouse, what days it will actually move from the origin towards the customer, towards the final recipient, is important. And that differs across services, especially between commercial and residential deliveries. As a matter of fact, you're going to see a lot more residential delivery movement nowadays than you see commercial movement nowadays. So that's a big thing to pull that together. Okay. Okay, so Maria, I'm going to throw one back to here. This is from Jeff Lem. Will Maria and ProShip help customers with other kinds of requirements? I'm sorry, guys, I need to read the first one. With the growth of e-commerce, is EDI still a big requirement? Or do you see other forms of digital communication allowed? And then the follow-up to that is, will companies like Dotcom and ProShip help customers with these kind of requirements? Does that make sense?
I think so. So I think from our perspective, EDI is required by most retailers. Most of the bigger retailers, we are required to communicate with them through EDI. But for direct to consumer, I don't really communicate with any of my clients via EDI on direct to consumer. It's usually FTP protocols that are going back and forth. So it's, and I don't know that it's clearly with, we do help our clients with that integration. That is part of our integration.
Let's twist the way you're thinking about this a little bit. Let's say I'm a manufacturer. I need to use you. And so I'm going to get orders in from Walmart, from Target, so on and so forth. I think that's where this is coming from. So I'm not used to doing B2C or B2B sales, right, that aren't truckload.
Oh, you're talking about drop ship? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, let's think about this kind of like a drop shipper.
Okay. So on a drop shipper, are we doing EDI? I don't think that we're communicating via EDI for drop ships for e-commerce.
But and my experience with this is that it varies a lot. So we just for those of you who are trying to follow along here, we've talked about this as if it's your goods, it's coming from your marketplaces. Okay, in that case, you're usually consolidating those orders and you're sending those as some part of EDI or an FTP or some type of that to Dotcom or to your 3PL, and they are following that through with the inventory that they have, et cetera, et cetera. If you're a manufacturer and you're looking to a 3PL to actually provide all the fulfillment services, again, we still kind of expect that you're going to be getting EDI from whatever major retailer is actually selling on your behalf, okay? And the 3PL is actually going to be drop shipping. They're going to be putting your name on the label, even though it's coming from their warehouse. So I think this is not the easiest question, but it's definitely one of those things where EDI has changed since we've been in business. I mean, it used to be all EDI. It used to be all either Edifact or X12. The appropriate 980s and the 890s and 210s and all those various things. A lot of that has been hidden by software. It's one of the beautiful things out there is I no longer have to know those formats anymore. I don't even have to remember which number goes with which one, because whether you're using those modern ones or whether you've agreed upon some type of a flat file or a dynamic file like a JSON-based file or an XML-based file, those are usually handled at the IT level. The individual IT folks will probably help you with that, okay? But that being said, as the owner of the inventory, still responsible for helping to coordinate all of that together. Maria, would you add anything to that?
No, I think you've summed that up much better than me, and clearly you are more of a tech person than I am.
Yeah, excellent.
I do know those EDI numbers.
Yeah, well, I mean, once you've gone through enough of them, they're nightmares. You just can't forget them.
I know.
So, all right, so I think we've covered about enough here. We are at the top of the hour. Maria, I would like to thank you for our time today. I'd like to thank our audience for joining us. If there's any questions we didn't get to, ProShip's marketing staff will be collecting those and trying to get back to you all. If any of them are from Maria and her team, we will try to get her feedback as well. We thank you all for attending. And Maria, once again, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Justin. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, everybody.